Africa, then remember looking back, my sweetie. It don't ever make you backward, no. Looking back to ourselves never made you backward. Looking back to our traditions never made you backward. Looking back to our foods never made you backward. Looking back to your soul never made you backward.
Just to give a bit of context as to why we decided to publish the transformation of ACORD. ACORD's history was one of being a northern alliance that had been working in the continent for over 30 years. And in so doing, generated a critical mass of African employees who felt there was a need to transform the organization, to give it an identity much more relevant and much more aligned with the work that it was doing. And the manner in which this was done wasn't necessarily conventional. It came about through an assertion of the need to ensure that the whole question of empowerment and of exercise of authority was actually diffused so that everybody who was working in the organization would feel empowered to participate in the decision-making processes of the organization and the views and the visioning of the organization. As you can imagine, this is not a conventional model for change or for transformation. Therefore, there wasn't a blueprint of how you would do this. Instead, it was a series of events, a series of conversations, discussions that led us to where we are. Now, one of the conclusions that I had long drawn was that if you were to have a plan for the transformation that we have gone through, you never would have done it. Because the numbers wouldn't have added up, there wouldn't have been a methodology for doing it, so you wouldn't have done it. And that's the learning that the ACORD transformation can generate for anybody who looks at it, depending on how you come at it. There were moments of anxiety, there were moments of despair, there was severe conflict, there were disagreements, but they were battled through. People sat down, talked through them, went through them. And I'm sure that if you were to go back to it, there are different sentiments all over the place for people who are involved with it. Some of us, to be honest, are very young in it. We are only about 7, 8 years old in the entire process, which is a process that spans over 35 years. And I am sure when we are long gone, there will be new people who come on board. But the spirit in which this has been done is a spirit of inclusiveness, a willingness to listen, a willingness to dialogue. And that is really what we wish to espouse in the organization, so that you create a platform where people can feel that they have a voice and they can do things and see the results, and they can be included in processes.
I was approached to say, would you be interested in writing something, a story about ACORD? And the answer was, this is a wonderful opportunity you don't often get. The trick is, how do you do it, and what is it all about? And how do you try and find a storyline? And a storyline that we, in discussion with the board and with the management, decided would be a storyline that focuses on organizational transformation more than on programming. The signature change, probably, and transformation with ACORD has been quite a deep one. It's around identity. So the storyline in the book and the storyline for today's presentation and discussion is one about organizational change. That's the storyline. And its relevance for the future. This is a 35-year-old story. The storyline is trying to explain how can you do a deep transformation in an organization from how it started off, which I'll explain in a moment, to where it is now. Part of the relevance of that for today is that many international NGOs are trying to find ways to become more local. We call it decentralization or whatever term you use. There has been, probably for the last 10 years, if not more, an increased emphasis within the international NGO community to start to belong more clearly to the countries that you work in. And the ACORD experience is a unique one in terms of how that over 35 years took place. The start of the book is sort of a summary chapter, and it deals with these 4 sort of strands. Because over 35 years, if you think back 35 years ago to what we thought development was all about, to what we think it's all about now, there have been many changes. If you look at the condition of Africa, Africa's development condition over 35 years, the bottom sort of line on that diagram, there have been many changes. If you look at where NGOs have come from since the mid-70s to now, in terms of their own thinking about themselves, in terms of becoming part of civil society, whatever that means, in terms of donor policies towards financing civil society organisations and NGOs, there's been an enormous change over 35 years. So we are talking about a long story. The first lesson for ACORD in terms of organisational change, and we see it with many international NGOs, is that history matters. How you have started off in an organisation determines how you can move it. The second, and it's something that I touch on in the book but I haven't spoken about, is leadership. Leaders do have to lead processes, but it has to be the right type of leadership. And ACORD's track record of appointing chief executives was not particularly stunning, if I can put it that way. This being the exception to the rule. The second, and this is a very tricky one for international NGOs, is push and pull. Do you, as in the ACORD case, gain decentralization because of the pull that's coming from people who are committed to having an organization which is theirs in this continent? Or is it a push from above saying decentralization is a good thing to do because we have to move where the money is? Another lesson is it takes time. You have to persevere. Deep change is not a quick fix. Another thing, another lesson is to get governance right in terms of its relationship with senior management. Do you coach? Do you control? Do you try and do both? To be clear about, in terms of governance, where does your mandate come from?
Keep walking, got nothing left to fear. Keep walking.
Omwaka gwa 95.
She's talking of around 1995 when ACORD ultimately went to the community where she comes from. People kept wondering, what is ACORD? Is it an intelligence organization? What is it? It started working with a few parishes. They were trained, they were educated, they became so happy, and then they appealed to ACORD to scale up its activities within the entire sub-county. Now she's talking about how they used to use the money that they would get as loans. That sometimes they would even organize parties and merry-making, and they thought by doing that they were actually doing something great. But when ACORD came and started teaching them about how to manage such schemes, they realized that actually they had lost quite a lot. They started learning that they should actually begin putting in an interest of 2%. After that, ACORD started teaching them to work in groups. Now she's talking about another intervention which ACORD supported, and that is rainwater harvesting. The place where she comes from is one of the most water-stressed areas. It's part of the cattle corridor. So water is actually a very big problem. So now ACORD comes in and starts supporting them with rainwater harvesting. Yeah, from the roofs, from the rooftops. They will harvest the water, use it at home, but also even sell to the others, especially during the dry season, those who do not or do not have access to the tanks.
sente wito kurundana ACORD
The money which they were generating, which they still generate today from selling part of the water, but also from other projects which you talk about, they would put it together and then begin building tanks for other members. When she's talking like she's talking, she's very sure that there are people who have been to her place and they can bear witness to that. ACORD also educated them on mushroom growing, which they didn't know at all, and they used to imagine maybe that was something that only God can do. ACORD also educated them on livestock farming, especially using small pieces of land, what we call zero grazing. She's talking about some of the benefits coming out of livestock rearing, and she talks about getting them out of it for home consumption, but also for sale. Using cow dung for manure, which they are using in their own banana plantations.
In the banana leaves.
These are some of the products which they are getting from banana leaves. She's attributing all this to ACORD's support, ACORD's interventions. And she's also brought in another element that in the past, they would work, they would produce, and they would consider everything to be like net profit. But through ACORD's training, they began to realize that you should actually even cost your own labor. And then at the end of the day, you can have a balance sheet and see whether you are making a profit or loss. And at a personal level now, well, that when ACORD came in, they were living in a house which was not a very good house, but through all the support role that she has been talking about, they have been able to construct a better house. Many people have visited her place to learn from her experiences and the work that she does, especially from Sudan. Who came to look at how animals were being looked at. And these were activities organized by ACORD.
The book is very rich. It documents a story of transformation and a story of claim making from below. And it's really an example of how power dynamics play out. And there are a lot of international organizations today grappling with issues of decentralization, making sure that they have national chapters, national boards, issues of governance. And this book covers a lot of that. Where there is commitment and belief, there can be a way out. That is what I think this book confirms, that if people are committed, if people are determined to get somewhere, they will get there.
To be able to create a social awareness towards our agenda and the development issues that we're doing in the 18 countries that we're working in, and be able to communicate to people on a very individualistic basis.
The message I want to send to organizations is that we have a time to do our time, as the book tells us, but then we also have time to pull out and give an opportunity to the local people or the local organizations to carry on from there, once we feel that they have had enough of capacity building to be able to manage their own lives.
Like the experience from Janet from Uganda, and reaching out to people and enabling them, building up their lives and making a difference is really an awesome thing. To see someone living a different life because of what you're doing, the impact that you're creating, because even when you face out, that person will be there to remember what you've done, and that is something that will last for long.
It's not as if we don't know how to do it. It's the commitment that senior management and governance makes to govern well, and that has to come from within. Just satisfying donor requirements is okay, but it's not really where the responsibility lies. The responsibility lies with the governing body and with senior management. And they can get a lot of support if they want it. But they have to say that's what we want. You can't expect northern agencies to impose governance in a neo-colonial sort of way, to tell you how to run your board or to tell you who your CEO should be. It's simply not acceptable. I really wait for ACORD's guidance in terms of the book stops in 2010. It's now 2012, and ACORD is trying to strategize to the future. The last chapter of the book tries to actually look to the future and say, what can ACORD be looking for in terms of its position? And let's hope that that is a useful input for them and for other organizations, other NGOs that read the book, about what's coming down the track for Africa and how are we going to cope with that, how are we going to respond. So hopefully we will start to see it in ACORD's new strategies and in the strategies of other NGOs, if we are lucky.
This is the first launch here in Africa, Kenya, Nairobi, and it will be followed by another launch in London in October, and also a launch in Paris and Ottawa in Canada in the coming month. On our website, people have access to the first chapter of the book, which is also a bit of a summary of the content of the book, and feel free, so on www.accordinternational.org, to go to our also online shop and Shop for Good and find the book. The book is available there, and try and share widely with your networks, and of course read the book. The book is available in English, the original language, and has been translated in French as well. So, and feel free also to share your feedback, because this book is not just about ACORD, but it's about the broader community. How do we engage and debate more to have more effective change and to have a stronger ownership when it comes to African organization participation. The concept of citizen-driven change is very important as well. And this book is also tracing history in the view of the future for a better future, a more efficient and a more empowered African population.
I say walk on, baby, walk on. You gotta leave the rest behind. Walk on, walk on. You got nothing left to fear. Balicheza balimba, bakisikiza tetesi, yakuni usue. Nyarenakren, ona wa mama yo, tizama ya jayo, tute fini. Balicheza walima, akisikiza tetesi, yakukuhusue. Nyarenakren, ona wa papa yo, tizama ya jayo, tute fini. I say walk on. Baby, walk on. You gotta leave the rest behind. Walk on, walk on. Hey, there's nothing left to fear.